Now, for more on this topic, joining us from our LA studio is George Heminger. He is founder of Survive and Thrive TV. George, thanks for being with us. So, in this situation, you see just average Americans that are struggling, that are trying to get repairs done for the apartments that they're renting. Meanwhile, these are foreclosed places that Deutsche Bank owns that they say, hey, it's not our responsibility. Is this kind of a sign of a growing divide that isn't Republican versus Democrat, the way that the debate is usually framed in the United States, but that is becoming more about haves versus have-nots?
Well, it's economic collapse. It's we thought we were in a recovery. What we're actually entering is the second Great Depression, and this is just one example of one of the effects upon the American people. Is foreign banks taking large percentages of property ownership away from Americans, and now being totally irresponsible with living conditions of America. I mean, I compare it to letting the gates open and letting the pirates come in and rape and pillage the American people.
So, you touched upon having a foreign bank coming in and doing this, and other foreign countries have been named by analysts as coming into the United States and being slumlords more broadly because workers are cheaper here than in Europe, because they are not unionized like they are in Europe. How do you feel that foreign companies and foreign banks are coming in and doing this? And do you agree that they're essentially slumlords?
Well, yeah, I mean, entire classes of banks are becoming slumlords. The system just isn't working. We had too much liquidity pumped into the system, and it all went into real estate. And I think the bigger story here isn't just the fact that banks are taking advantage, or they're slow to act in repairing properties and allowing Americans to live in substandard third world conditions. It's more that Americans that own property right now, or that have just bought property, could experience declines of their wealth. I mean, we are seeing a decade of losses in real estate. I think we're down from the peak all the way to 2000. I mean, it's ridiculous. The entire growth in real estate, as far as wealth was concerned, was just a mirage, and it was entirely put on by the Federal Reserve. And now you're seeing all the consequences of all those actions.
Well, and it looks like there's going to be more consequences. You mentioned that we saw housing prices dip to 2002 levels. Economists are saying it's a double dip, and 28% of U.S. homeowners are still underwater on their mortgages, so that would indicate that more foreclosures are to come. But there are areas of the United States that are doing quite well, I want to point out, George, where $10 million mansions are selling, and where right here in this area, the Washington, D.C. area, are 4 of the top 10 richest counties in the nation. I have some numbers that I want to throw up there just so you can get a sense of these counties and the kind of household income that is the median income, and they're all in the D.C. area. Also in the D.C. area, unemployment is 5.7%, far below the national average. The S&P's numbers that came out with the home price index that showed 19 out of 20 cities saw a decline. That one city that did not was Washington, D.C. What does that say about this area? Is Washington, D.C., where I'm sitting, the capital of the haves? And does that then make you feel like your government's out of touch with reality?
Well, Washington, D.C. is the new royalty in America. You are our masters, and we are the slaves to serve you through taxes, obedience, and following your regulations. And when things start to go a little bit more bad in Washington, D.C., what they'll do is they'll turn on the screws even harder to the American people. So we're seeing things like $500 fees here if you cross a white line for a red light ticket. They're instituting traffic cameras everywhere. The whole goal is you, as I mean American people outside of Washington, D.C., are not providing enough income to our masters. So, I don't know what the end result will be, but maybe there will be a night where Americans get fed up with this and will be storming the gates of Washington, D.C. with pitchforks.
Do you think that that's really where this will lead, and do you think that's the answer? I mean, what do you think would lead this to change and lead that gap to be bridged?
Well, you're seeing it all over the world. You're seeing it in Spain, where they have 20% unemployment, and God knows what type of employment for teenagers and people in their 20s. and you're seeing revolution throughout the Middle East. I think America has a few more years to maybe get to that point, but right now what you're seeing is a slow bleed for the American family. You're seeing people that have had 2 incomes, now they're surviving on 1 income. They had a mortgage, they've lost that to foreclosure. They had 2 cars, now they're down to 1 car. So right now the squeeze is on, the slow bleed, and Americans are just trying to they're trying to get food stamps. We don't have bread lines because 40 million plus Americans are on food stamps. So right now, Americans are just turning to anything from psychotropic medications to food stamps. I mean, we're literally grasping at straws, and I think that's why the data is coming in. Well, that finally Americans are understanding, or a majority of Americans are understanding, that this is not the recession that they've experienced in the past. This is the second Great Depression.
Well, and when you look at the unemployment numbers, and the unemployment in this recession compared to others, it's just so much larger in this recession than any other the U.S. has experienced since World War II. But that is another discussion. I really want to thank you, George Heminger, founder of Survive and Thrive TV, for bringing us your analysis on this issue in Los Angeles.